Welcome to another Code Made Easy video tutorial presented by Blackstar Code Academy, where we make learning to code easy. For complete, easy to understand and detailed coding video tutorials, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy. Here you'll find in-depth coding instruction and lessons that are easy to understand and follow. So visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now we're going to continue today with lesson number 6 in our Getting to Know Bootstrap introductory tutorial series. This will be, like I said, lesson number 6. And lesson numbers 1 through 5, what we did, we got familiar with Bootstrap. We also installed our editor, which we'll be using, Notepad++. You can download this free editor at notepad++.org. We also learned about grids and the grid system within Bootstrap. So also, we built out our first components of our pages. We built out the header section here. We installed just some simple example text here. We built out these 3 blocks here in our sections, and we moved on to our next section where we built out these offset sections here, these offset columns, and we also built out our call to action section here. Now in today's lesson, lesson number 6, we'll be building out these 2 components here. Now these are 2 equally sized dimension blocks here that we'll be building out in this lesson here. Now if you want to review any of this information, you can go back to our lessons number 1 through 5, and it details all the information for building out this the website or this web page up to this point. Now let's go ahead and get started. We'll go over to our editor here, and you see we have our code here. We have our links to our Bootstrap CDN. You can learn more about how to install these links from our first lessons 1 through 5. It gives detailed information about how to acquire these links and install these links so you have remote access to the Bootstrap CDN and the Bootstrap toolkit, so that you won't need to download the entire toolkit and set it up and configure the toolkit on your local machine. So again, you can find out all this information in our previous lessons 1 through 5. We also, in lessons 1 through 5, just kind of recap, we built our section here, our top header section, and then we built out our next section and our third section, and our final section here. With our final section is a call to action section here. Now we'll be continuing on with our lesson here, the Bootstrap introductory lesson series, but continue to build out this section here as I mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and get started. You can get complete lessons on any of the information I've said detailed in this lesson and previous lessons by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy. So I'll go ahead and start by going to our final section from our previous lesson, lesson number 5. So we'll go ahead down to the bottom of our page and create a new section. So we'll go section with the section tag, and opening section tag, and closing section tag there. And then we'll go ahead and open up our section, just like here. And we'll go ahead and include our first div. We'll go to the opening div tag here, and our closing div tag there, and we'll open up that division as well. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and then for readability's sake, we'll go ahead and highlight the opening and closing div tags or our first div and tab over just a few spaces for readability and organization, and we're going to need to create our second div. Now this process is the same as the previous lesson, so this might be kind of redundant for anyone who's been following along, but we need to go through this process each and every time when we're building out. Get you familiar with working with code and typing in the divs and getting your tags correct and everything. And we'll go ahead and do our third div here. Div tag, opening div tag, closing div tag. Go ahead and open up that div, and we'll go ahead and space it and tab over, and we'll do our final div here within that div. So we've got the opening div tag, closing div tag, and we'll open up that final div. So now we have a total of 5 divs, I believe. So we have our section here. Within our section, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 divs. We got 4 divs within our section here. Now what we want to do in the process of building out this section here that's just below our call to action section, we're going to want to go ahead and create 2 additional sections here. Well, first let's go ahead and do our classes for our divs. We'll go that route first. So again, if you want to learn all about div classes as it relates to Bootstrap, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy, and we'll go ahead and do our first div class. We'll do class equals container here, and then we'll go down to our second div and we'll assign that a class of row. So we'll go ahead and class equals row and for that second div there. So we have our container class that's assigned to the first div, and our row class assigned to the next div. Now this third div here, we want to go ahead and give that we want to assign a responsive column. So we're going to use the Bootstrap class of class equals COL, and it's only going to be 6 columns long, because I'll explain that here in a second why it's like that. We'll do 6 column MD and then 6. Okay, so as I explained in the previous lessons 1 through 5, the columns are in a 12 column configuration. You don't see the columns here, but they're 12 columns across, so you can divide the 12 columns by any number divisible by 3. So there is an offset class as well. So if you have odd numbers of columns that you're using, you can offset those columns. Again, more information about offsets in our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy. Get more information about offsetting columns. So now what we want to do is within our row, which is inside of our container, we want to duplicate this column here, the responsive column here. So we highlight the div that's assigned a class of COLMD6. We'll go ahead and do a Control C for copy, and we'll go to our last column within that row, or our last div within that row, div tag within that row. Hit enter, then Control V, and that gets us another column within the same row. So you'll see what I'm talking about once we go back over to our work here on our page. So we'll just go ahead and perform a Control S to save that work. So that's saved. Now what we want to do is we want to add some linear styling to our div, and open it up and just kind of so we can see it here on the page. Because as you see in my build here, I've just got it the call to action section, and we're going to build out our next section here right below that. So this is what this code is. So what we'll do is add some linear styling to this last div here contained within our responsive column that's assigned to this div here. So we'll go ahead and do the word style equals, and then we'll apply our selector and properties to this style. It will be a style of border. And then we'll do 1 pixel and then solid black, followed by a semicolon. You can learn more about linear styling. That's what we're performing here, is linear styling on our Patreon page at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy. And we'll go down to our second column here. This assigned the responsive column with COLMD6, and we'll add a linear style to that div that's within that column. So we'll go ahead and do style equals, and the same information. Border is selector, and the property is 1 pixel, solid black, followed by a semicolon. Let me put some space in between that last column there. Okay, and then we'll do a Control S, and we saved our work. Now we want to add some additional styling to each one of these columns classes that we have here, so or each one of these divs. So we'll go ahead and do a height of 2 200 pixels, 200 pixels, followed by a semicolon, and it will add another styling property and selector, height, colon, 200 pixels, again followed by a semicolon, and we'll go ahead and Control S. We'll go over to our work, and we'll see that, and I'll do a refresh on this page, and I'll scroll down, and you see our columns here that was just created. Now again, the columns are flush against the call to action section that's just above it. We want to create some space there. There's a number of ways we can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some padding to our container. So again, with some linear styling, we'll go ahead and do style equals padding followed by a colon, and we'll make this padding all the way around of, let's say, 40 pixels, okay, followed by a semicolon, Control S, go back to our work, form a refresh on the page, and there we go. Now I want a little bit more padding because I want this section to line up with our top section here. So I want to move this over a little bit. We can accomplish that by adding some additional padding. So I'll go ahead and do padding, change this from 40 pixels to 70 on the padding, and we'll form a refresh on our page, and there we go. So we pretty much lined up there. So now we have excuse me, our columns here. So we have our columns that are 6 columns long in this, for this block here, and then there's 6 columns along for this block here. Again, as I stated earlier, with the grid system you have 12 columns, which you can't see, and 6 plus 6 equals 12. So we have all 12 columns here. So we have that done in our code for this particular lesson. So we've got our columns here, we've got our call to action, we've got our offset columns above that, and then we got our 3 columns here. So in upcoming lesson, in lesson number 7, we'll be taking a little bit step further. We'll be adding a footer section just below our columns here, the last column we just created. Add our footer section with some content, and we'll be dividing that footer section up into additional columns and add the content there. Now just to recap today's lesson, we created our section here, our next section. We created our divs here, our divs 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have a div within inside our responsive div that has the responsive class assigned to it. So that pretty much does it for this lesson. Again, if you want additional information regarding Bootstrap, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy, as well as WordPress and in-depth tutorials and lessons and instructions on all of the information that I just presented here and in our previous lessons at patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy, stumbling over words, CodeMadeEasy. So again, I will see you in our next video. It'll be lesson number 7, where we'll continue to build out our page, and in upcoming lessons we'll also be changing this header content here. We'll be changing, and we'll be adding a background image as well as some buttons here, making it look more professional. This is just to get you familiar with the framework of how Bootstrap works. Okay, so we'll be cleaning this up and making it a little bit more professional, and I encourage you to go back and just kind of, if you're working through the video or looking through the video, to go back and just as I present the information, just kind of take your time, pause the video, and practice coding the different divisions, your alignment, your styling techniques, and your code organization, just to become a better developer and coder. Again, if you want more in-depth lessons, you go to patreon.com/CodeMadeEasy, and I will see you in the next lesson.